You know, so important in times like these to come together and have a place for thought leadership and to share some inspiration. I hope to provide some reasons for us to actually be hopeful for the next chapter. But before I do, I want to just address the political moment that we're in. Okay, some unprecedented things are happening in our country, and it's really important we remember. You know, Trump is not unstoppable. We are not powerless, and this is not the end of the world. We're going to make it through this, and I would say never underestimate the power that we have in the state of California. This state has led in so many sectors, in so many ways, and you think about the climate challenge that we're in now, right? Remember that the solutions that we need were born here in California. First utility scale wind project in the world, built here in our state. First utility scale solar, first rooftop solar, first electric vehicle, energy storage, first energy efficiency codes and standards, all born here and have gone global. And we have to carry that with us. And remember, you know, one thing that inspires me is like, think back to the people who were pioneering those things 20, 30 years ago, okay, when the cost of solar was literally like, you know, $5 a watt instead of 10 cents a watt, how much harder it was, and they persevered. And we have to draw on sort of that strength of our ancestors in some ways to carry through this term. And to remember as well that during the first Trump administration from 2016 to 2020, we made more climate policy progress. I've been doing this for 25 years. That 4-year period, we did more than any other time I can remember. That's when we passed 100% clean energy law. It's when we passed the carbon neutrality law. It's when we passed the solar mandate for all new construction. We're putting solar on every single new building in California now. It's when we did the first executive order, 100% zero emission vehicles by 2030. So a lot happened, and we have to remember that there's a huge amount. Most of the policies that really matter on climate are actually state and local policies. So we got to keep pushing. Right now, we have the mantle back. We are the keepers of the flame of hope. And so I want to walk you through a little bit what's happening in California, and then we'll open up and have a conversation. So my wife is Chinese. My kids went to Chinese school. I'm really interested. This word in Chinese, the word for crisis is weiji, which is just two other words put together: danger and opportunity. And there's always opportunity inside a crisis. And that is true of the climate crisis as well. The way I got into this work in 2001, I was working for Mayor Willie Brown in the city of San Francisco. We had blackouts every day just hit us suddenly out of nowhere. We didn't know what the cause was. We now know that was market manipulation from companies like Enron. But in the middle of that, there had to be a response, right? And so we put together a $100 million bond initiative to put solar panels on public buildings, city reservoir, city hall, the airport, convention center, city, and out of that, an organization was born, and I spent the last quarter century doing this work. Best decision I made. And so for those of you who are thinking about your own career paths, I will just say it's been incredibly rewarding. I'm so privileged and fortunate to be in the clean energy field, and I really highly recommend this field. It's dynamic. When I was in the solar industry, we called it the solar coaster because there's so many ups and downs, but incredibly rewarding, but all born for me out of a crisis. So where are we now? Important to remember that the future of energy is going to flow through wires and not pipes, okay? And so the electric grid is ascendant. And today in California, we're at 61% clean electricity today. So this is something that, that's where someone started to applaud. You can applaud. All right, so guys, alternative energy is the wrong word to use to describe renewables, okay? Fossil is alternative on the grid in California. We're going to hit 2/3 clean power this year, all right, in 2025. And the law requires us to get to 90% clean energy by 2035 and 100% by 2045. I'm absolutely confident we're going to hit those goals. We're deploying a massive amount of clean energy. And at the same time, what's happening is the electrification of almost everything. We're adding 1,300 electric vehicles a day. We're electrifying the building sector, heavy duty as well. But this is really fundamental to remember. The grid is getting cleaner. It's driven also by market trends, because one of the things that happens as you scale renewables, they get cheaper, solar and wind and so forth. And so even in states that don't support, the clean energy policies, those grids are getting cleaner as well because it's just cheaper than coal. And so in the US last year, 95% of new capacity additions on the electric grid were clean energy. 99% of the retirements were fossil. And of course, coal, which for a long time we were told this is going to be the energy source in the US for 1,000 years. I remember going to a coal industry conference and seeing that. And what's happened? So in 2011, we were 52% coal. Now we're down to about 16% and falling. And coal is on its way to exiting the electric grid entirely in the coming years in the United States. So this is another one of my favorite quotes. The people who say it can't be done should get out of the way of the people who are doing it. So let's take a tour of some of what's happening in California. So this is the world's largest thin film solar PV project. This was commissioned, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, just to give you a sense of the innovation just over the course of construction of this single project. They used to do the piers for these utility scale solar projects. They were a concrete pier. You had to dig it out and pour concrete. Then they innovated and they just vibrate in a steel post. Very fast, much cheaper, much lower impact. This installation, if you go see it, the first half of the field, they have aluminum frames around the solar panels. They figured out how to eliminate those for the second half. The efficiency on this project of the solar panels was not high enough to do a horizontal single axis tracker. So when you do a tracker that follows the sun, you generate about 25% more power, but the efficiency actually of the panels by the time this project was done was high enough so that going forward, all of the solar is now on trackers. And so just to give you a sense of like the things that are driving the cost down. We're also home in California to the world's largest geothermal power plant. This is called the Geysers. It's enough power, about 1 gigawatt in size to power a city like San Francisco. That's 24/7 clean energy. And we're home as well to what used to be the world's largest wind project, is now the third largest, Alta Wind Energy Center. And I would say I love losing these records. It's a great sign when we get beat. I love it because it was lonely for a while doing this stuff. And now Texas is actually doing a great job on wind, and I congratulate them for that. We also are home to the world's largest solar roof. So this is the Apple headquarters in Cupertino. And just for those of you, anyone been to that building? Raise your hand. A couple of you, yeah. So this is quite unique. The inside is actually, it's huge. You can take the entire 49ers football stadium and put it in that donut hole, but they filled it with fruit trees. So employees get plums and pears and so forth. And it's a 17 megawatt solar roof. And then we also have the world's largest battery storage project in Kern County. And all of these technologies are scaling rapidly as the costs have come down kind of faster than expected. And that's a really, really positive trend. Cost reductions are driven by three things. It's innovation, automation, and scale. And it's mostly scale, but we're making progress on all those. Great stat. So the fastest growing energy industry in the world is solar. In 2004, it took a year to build 1 gigawatt of solar. In 2010, it took a month. In 2016, it took a week. In 2023, it took a day. And last year, 2024, half a day. So it's in excess of $500 billion a year going into solar around the world on the electric grid. It's the single largest investment on the global electric grid. And by the way, we're not done with cost reduction. There is further, we're funding a bunch of this. The efficiency is getting better. The wafers are getting thinner. The tracking systems are getting more optimized. And so it's the cheapest resource, and it's getting cheaper. Battery storage has been another really big one for us. We got 13,000 megawatts of energy storage in the state. That got us through this summer. So we had the hottest summer in the history of the state of California with the highest electric load in the history of the state of California. We got through it not only without any rotating outages on the grid, but without any flex alerts. So that's a big deal, and storage is the reason why. It's really what's happening. We're getting that surplus of power in the middle of the day, charging up our storage fleet, and then the batteries are helping us get through that afternoon shoulder as the sun goes down. And we're adding a total of 27 gigawatts to the grid since Gavin Newsom became governor 6 years ago. This is unprecedented. And again, as I mentioned, about half of that is energy storage. We also had something remarkable happen last year. For the first time ever, we hit 100% clean energy for some period of the day on 219 days in 2024. You can applaud. That's a big deal. So almost 2 out of every 3 days. And guys, we're not going to stop until we get to 100% clean energy for 100% of the people in the state, 100% of the time. And that's where we're going. But I highlight this because even this, just 5 years ago, people were saying this is mythology. And now we're regularly doing that. And of course, storage is a big enabler of that. We're also making progress on reducing the environmental impact of renewables. There's an environmental impact for every single technology. With wind, for example, the early wind turbines had very, very high RPM and were relatively small. So, this is one project called Vasco. We replaced 432 turbines with 34 of the new ones. It tripled the energy production and cut avian mortality by 70%. So big progress there as well. Offshore wind, we're putting a lot of effort into that. 25 gigawatts is the state goal. These are for systems that are 20 miles offshore, both off the central coast and off Morro Bay and the north coast off of Humboldt. And they're floating turbines. One rotation of the turbine powers 2 houses for a day. So that's the scale we're at, 18 megawatts. As I mentioned, the governor also signed this extraordinary mandate in 2020 in the middle of the wildfires to do 100% zero emission vehicles by 2035. And we're now over 2 million electric vehicles in the state of California, adding, as I mentioned, 1,300 a day. So about 1 out of 4 new vehicles bought today is electric. And this is happening, and this growth is happening as you read all these stories that, electric cars are, failing and all this stuff. So the market for electric vehicles is growing in every single state, every single year. There is I would say, kind of a campaign to make it seem otherwise, but there's not a single major car manufacturer in the world today that's not doing electric. And remember that half the cost of the vehicle is the battery pack, and batteries are coming down. So batteries were $1,000 a kilowatt hour 12 years ago. We're now down to roughly 70 in that neighborhood. And we're going to drive that cost down, and energy density comes up and the range will get longer. So this trend will continue. We project that zero emission vehicle sales will surpass internal combustion engine vehicle sales by 2028. And just to look, this is a kind of interesting look at what the range of the vehicles is. You can see every year the median range goes up, and that actually means you can go further, and it eases the need for charging a bit. So we also have the biggest electric vehicle, or the biggest car factory actually in North America, in Fremont, and we're seeing bigger and bigger charging installations as well. We're funding a lot of this. This one on the right here is an Electrify America installation. It used to be a car repair oil change place, and it's now you go and charge your car, and it's like a drive-through charging. Tesla, of course, just opened their charger network to all non-Tesla EVs, and that integration will be complete by March. So every non-Tesla EV will be able to charge a Tesla charger, and we're seeing some other really great innovation as well, putting chargers in lampposts so you can actually have street-side parking. And this is a great company in San Diego called Beam. You don't need to plug into the grid at all. It's got a tracking solar array with a 4.5 kW battery underneath and a 12,000 pound steel ballast plate. It goes in a parking spot. You park your car there. You can charge 2 cars without having to trench or permit or connect to the grid. And then some other interesting stuff too. We're seeing batteries getting integrated with chargers. This is a heavy duty charger site in the Bay Area in Gilroy, where they would have had to do a very expensive utility upgrade to provide this power. But they figured out if you integrate the battery into it, you avoid the upgrade, and they did it in 3 months instead of 2.5 years. We're also seeing more and more heavy duty long range vehicles. So this is a Tesla Semi. Pepsi has their fleet here. I had a chance to drive one of these. They said fully loaded, and fully charged, the truck can go 545 miles on a single charge. That's what the longest they've measured. And we also are happy to support electric school buses. So another big milestone in Oakland in August, we had the first all-electric school bus fleet in North America for a city, 74 buses, 74 chargers, and it's vehicle to grid. So the 150 kilowatt hour battery, they come in, they maybe use 50 kilowatt hours on the route, and then they can feed that surplus power back into the grid at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. when the grid really needs it and get compensated. So gasoline consumption peaked in California in 2019, and it's been going down since. And so we've hit peak gasoline, and that's trending down as we get more and more EVs on the road. And we now have more electric vehicle chargers in the state than we have gasoline nozzles, a little over 150,000. Yep. We're going further upstream on an initiative we're calling Lithium Valley to source this lithium in California. So most of the lithium that we use in our batteries comes from Chile and Argentina, where it's evaporation ponds, or China and Australia, where it's hard rock mining. This is the greenest way to produce lithium in the world because it's from a superheated geothermal brine, and it's attached to a geothermal power plant process. So powered by 100% clean energy to produce 20,000 tons of lithium. If you do it from South America, you impact 30,000 acres. If you do it from hard rock mining in China, Australia, 3,000 acres. If you do it here in California, 30 acres. So very small footprint. And we have enough lithium to power 375 million electric vehicle batteries. As we've done all this, I want to highlight the main critique that we've gotten from many, many folks, particularly some red state governors. Oh, this is going to crash your economy. Well, what has happened? We were the 10th largest economy in the world. We started aggressive innovation and decarbonization, 15 years ago, really. And then we passed Russia, past Brazil, past Italy, past France, past the UK. We're now the 5th largest economy in the world. And I think that's a really important story to lift up, that we can do this and it's compatible, in fact, supportive of a healthy economy. So 1900 in New York City, Fifth Avenue, all horses and buggies and one car. 13 years later, all cars and one horse and buggy. I love this because it's just a reminder of how quickly the transformation can happen. We got to take that with us. Few final things to share, and then we'll open up to questions. We did a rooftop solar mandate in 2020, and then in 2023 we mandate solar for every new building, and so that's underway. We're getting almost a gigawatt of new solar just through that code, and we're now, as of our new code we just adopted in September, driving towards all electric heat pumps for hot water, for heating and cooling. And then we're seeing electrification everywhere. The induction cooktops. By the way, the cooktops this is a company that has a battery in the stove. So if your power ever goes out, not only can you cook, but you can charge your phone from your stove. So street sweepers being electric. We're seeing police departments in Fort Bragg and elsewhere, Pasadena, going electric. We just did the charging infrastructure for the first electric ferries in North America, which are now being constructed for the Bay Area. San Diego just took delivery last year, the first electric tugboat in the world. Right here, Long Beach has electrified cranes. And then in the Bay Area, connecting Silicon Valley to San Francisco, we just converted in September from diesel to electric for that rail service. So to wrap up, I think the way to think about our common project here, the energy transition, it's very analogous to the story of smoking in the United States. So both my grandfathers were in World War II. Every American soldier, as part of daily rations, you got chocolate, you got food, and you got a pack of cigarettes. Okay, so a generation of American men came home from the war as smokers. And then, smoking was, very common in our culture. President Kennedy smoked, Marilyn Monroe smoked. Some people say they smoked together. Some of you guys will get that. Johnny Carson smoked on The Tonight Show. Fred Flintstone smoked. Doctors did ads for cigarettes. Okay, so, and then the science started to come out, hey, smoking causes cancer and secondhand smoke causes cancer. So what was the response of the tobacco industry? They went from manufacturing one product to manufacturing two products. They made cigarettes and they manufactured doubt. They put $100 million into junk science to distort this basic truth that we all know today, that smoking causes cancer. And it's really instructive to look at what happened next, because eventually the truth did get out, the public did see it, and it led to this cascade of policies, health warnings on cigarette patches, banning ads of cigarettes on TV, increase in cigarette tax, sales to minors, and we went from half the country down to 9%. It's really one of the greatest public health success stories in our country's history, and driven by sound science getting accepted. So I draw a lot of hope from that. So let me wrap with another hopeful story, which is I'm really inspired by the vision of trying to leave things better than we found them everywhere we can. And this has happened in the North Coast, and this is a story that does not get enough attention, led by the tribes, and most especially the Yurok tribe. This is the largest dam removal project in the world, the Klamath Dam, and was blocking the salmon migration. And after a 20-year fight, they've just removed those 4 dams, and the salmon run is restoring. And along with that, they reintroduced the condor. So in the Yurok culture, the condor is really important. It's the highest flying bird in that region. It's thought to confer wisdom to the people, and then in turn to be the medium for humanity's hopes to be expressed to the heavens. And 100 years ago, with lead bullets hunting, condor don't eat anything that's alive. They only eat carrion. Hunters would shoot, they'd leave the carcass, had a lead bullet, and the condors would get lead poisoning. So condors went extinct in that region. And just 2 years ago, they reintroduced the condor. They had a very successful breeding program. They're introducing 6 a year, and the condor is back and the river's back. And I think that's a lot of hope for us to draw on. So I'll stop there and open up to questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So I'm going to kick it off with a few questions myself, and everyone feel free to scan the QR code and send in your questions as well. So I think you painted a very rosy picture of what we're seeing in California, and sometimes it feels like we're a little bit insulated as well, and being a leader. And it seems like every day that we're waking up to another headline about the new federal administration pulling resources from clean energy initiatives, whether it be funding or people or even institutions. So with all this uncertainty and chaos surrounding the administration, how are you envisioning the future of the energy transition? Are we going to meet our goals as a state, as a country, and as a world?
Nice, easy question there. Look, my philosophy is you leave it all in the field, and you just work your heart out, and you have to live with where things land. I believe that we can turn the corner here. And I think one of the things to watch closely and to kind of lean into are unusual coalitions. Okay, so one of the things that's really interesting, the IRA money that the Biden administration did, and by the way, historic piece of legislation, visionary. I've been, as I said, doing this. Yeah, you guys know, 10-year tax credits for solar, for wind, for electric heat pumps, for energy storage, for electric vehicles, transformational for the utility sector and the automotive sector. One of the things that they did, I think very shrewdly, was a huge amount of that money went to red states. So I'm working with a Republican evangelical PUC commissioner in Georgia. His name is Tim Echols. Georgia got $25 billion of private capital coming in for battery factories, electric vehicle factories, and solar factories. They have 2 Republican senators who voted against that bill but don't want to lose those jobs. And so I think it was very politically shrewd, actually, of the Biden administration to do this, because they have a lot to lose if those tax credits disappear. And that's a big black eye on their face. So right now it is chaotic. The funding has been very, very, stopped and intermittent and so on. But at the end of the day, these are jobs, and those investments are underway. And I think it's actually almost harmful if California is the voice for these things. It's actually more effective right now to have that come from red states. And there's a ton of other, wind, all right, 85% of terrestrial wind projects in the U.S. are in red states, and solar as well. So I think we got to lean into those partnerships and keep pushing.
Yeah, I just don't think we sometimes see enough of that in our daily news as well. And I think it's good to be reminded of that. The public and private sectors are really often at odds with each other and don't always agree what falls under their purview and how they should be collaborating with each other. As someone who's spent time in both the public and private sectors in a variety of roles, what areas do you see the public sectors leading in? What areas do you see the private sectors leading in? And what areas do you think they should be kind of hand in hand in building and rebuilding sustainable cities?
Yeah, great question. Well, we need both. I think, and I would say in the role I'm in now, I feel like there's never been a more important time to be in public service and help set up effective rules of the road. I think about it a lot. It is almost like building a road system. When you think about climate policy, you want to construct the roads, you want to make sure they're well maintained, that there's speed limits and that they're enforceable and that safety is maintained, and then, let people drive where they want. That is kind of what we're doing when we set these clean energy goals and permitting systems and so forth. One wonderful thing, again, about California is we have the talent here on innovation. We are the destination state for clean tech investment. And it's not an accident that all this clean tech innovation has been born here. It's from our policy environment. And one of the things that we operate at the Energy Commission, our budget's about $8.5 billion. We have about $1.5 billion we're spending now just on clean tech R&D. And that's for startups. Some of them are quite big. Form Energy, we just gave a big $30 million grant to. They're doing a long duration, 100-hour battery, and then we do a whole bunch of really small grants, $200,000 grants for startups. And so that ecosystem has been really helpful. And I still believe if you're starting a exciting new clean tech company, California's a place to be, and we want to partner with you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room here today, so it's kind of exciting for all the opportunity, especially at a business school. In regards to the recent wildfires, the effort has shifted to rebuilding efforts. I was reading a New York Times article that came out early last week, and it was talking about how there were 4 or 5 different rebuilding committees that were established, including a federal one, Newsom's public-private initiative, LA Rises, and one to be led by a chief recovery officer appointed by Mayor Bass. To me, this is a bit confusing to have all of these separate entities, and my question becomes, what will this kind of disjointed effort to rebuild have on our sustainability goals? And shouldn't there be kind of a more cohesive plan, or at least guidelines?
Yeah, fair question. That is a bit above my pay grade. That's really for the governor. But I have asked one of our commissioners, Nancy Skinner, who is amazing, former 14-year member of the state Senate and Assembly, to be our lead on that. And she's engaging with the community here in LA around the rebuild and how you do that. Obviously, the need is to do it quickly, but also to do it well. And I think there's the ability to do both those things. So that's my goal.
I came across an interview you did a couple of years ago where you mentioned that seeing young people today coming into the field really inspires you and gives you hope. ECA's president, Josh, and I are constantly kind of spitballing ideas on how to spark more interest in the field amongst our peers because, and maybe we're biased, we think that this is such an interesting space to be in with a ton of opportunity to really make an impact. So what I want to know is what inspired you to enter the field initially, and where do you see the most opportunities for students or anyone considering a career change to enter and really make an impact?
Yeah, so I was totally adrift after college. I had no earthly idea what I was doing, bounced around, and I ended up through a series of events working in South Africa. Nelson Mandela had been released from prison, and he was president. The Truth Commission hearings were going on, and one of the things that he did was provide postal service to the townships. So I was living in a township in the Eastern Cape, relatively small one, about 30,000. And they'd never had postal service, but this is a way finally to exchange letters and packages and so forth. And they were powered by solar. And this is the area they didn't have power, but this thing had a battery, and this is 1996, 97, and it had light. And so at night it became a little gathering spot. And I was really inspired by that. Wow, solar can just pop in and provide this really valuable, wonderful new addition. And so the light kind of went on for me about the potential of solar. And and the link, I think of it as a very democratic energy, because you can put it on a small house, you can put a large house, you can put it at a school. Hard to do, rooftop coal power doesn't quite work like that. And then I happened to go to a talk where someone said something that just really caught my attention, which is, if you look at market trends, every time the market for solar doubles, the price goes down by 20%. And that's held very steady. And so I was like, I want to work on that, grow the market through policy, and the price comes down. And that's exactly what's happened. And, when I started on that in, 25 years ago, solar was the most expensive resource in the electric market. Now it's the cheapest. And this same trend, I think, we're seeing with other renewables and batteries and electric vehicles and wind and so on. And so I got really excited about the role of policy in creating a market transformation. And then I will just say in closing that, one of the great dividends about being in this field in climate and clean energy, I have met and been mentored by some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. It's been so enriching to get exposure to people who are on the cutting edge and are visionary thinkers. And that's been, the greatest reward of all. Yeah,
I think also being in this field for a lot less time so far, I've gotten everyone's very excited. And I think that is really inspiring to kind of, see the energy across the world and across the industries as well, because it's going to have to be, all the effort is going to have to go to decreasing emissions across all industries. So everyone's going to need to take some part in it, right? Okay, so there are a few questions that are tied around nuclear. Let's see. Okay. With rising energy demand from data centers and I think AI and building electrification, how is the CEC assessing nuclear power in grid reliability and decarbonization?
Yeah, so California constructed 5 nuclear plants. We have decommissioned 4 of those. The last remaining one is Diablo Canyon, which just got extended for another 5 years. And I would say, I think there are sort of 2 categories of nuclear. I think that incumbent nuclear, keeping that going, is an easier lift than new nuclear. There's a lot of talk about nuclear. Okay, there's only been 2 nuclear plants built this century in the United States. Okay, Vogtle 3 and Watts Bar, and both were colossally expensive. I mean, Vogtle 3 in Georgia was $31 billion and took 17 years for 2 gigs. Okay. Try that on for a sec. That's really, really pricey. And so, until there's a change in the cost picture, new nuclear does not have, much hope in the U.S. for cost reasons. And the number of nuclear plants has gone down. We were at, I think, 104 10 years ago. I think we're at 92 now. For incumbent nuclear, extending it, which is what the governor and the legislature did, that's a different kettle of fish. And one of the attributes of nuclear, of course, it is 24/7, reliable power. But I think what that will be competing with long term is energy storage. And I would say, from my perspective, energy storage is the most dynamic and exciting and important energy industry for the next decade, just because so much is going in and what that enables.
Yeah, there's a lot of intermittent energy, solar and wind. So we have to find a way to store it. So there's a few questions kind of related to, as we're rebuilding, how we make sure that it's equitable as well as sustainable. What do you see, kind of the role and how do we manage that as we balance the priorities of rebuilding quickly, but also making sure that we are rebuilding an equitable community?
Yeah, so despite the rhetoric of the moment coming from Washington, D.C., we're all in on lifting up the communities that have been hit hardest by pollution. That remains totally unchanged from my perspective. Today, we're doing about 60% of our electric vehicle charging infrastructure is going in low-income disadvantaged communities. About 70% of our clean energy demonstration projects going to low-income and disadvantaged communities. We have a special program for tribes. We've funded over $100 million for 10 tribal energy microgrids. These are solar, batteries, and controllers. And we're doing a bunch of rebate programs, including a big new one for heat pumps, which is currently, we're on pause for the moment. This is the HERO program, so $300 million for electric heat pump rebates for low-income households. So we're all in on that vision.
Thank you. One more question, then give you a minute to share any last thoughts with us. Have you seen, or how have the recent wildfires impacted California's energy policies?
Yeah, so what is happening is that climate change is making it harder to solve climate change. And that utility undergrounding and vegetation management is incredibly costly. And that is why rates have spiked so much. And unfortunately, those costs right now come on ratepayers. I think that is not good, because that also like, if you end up in a situation where it's more expensive to charge your electric car per mile than get gasoline, that's going to kill the EV market. Right now, that's not the case, but it's trending badly. So on the other hand, gasoline prices have been going up. So, but that is the challenge that we're in, and we have to navigate that. I think, from my perspective, this current moment is like really indicates for borrowing to meet these needs, because we have to not burden ratepayers with these excessive climate costs, and we have to make the investments to deal with climate. And so that's the challenge that we're in.
I appreciate it. I've learned so much throughout your talk today. I really appreciate you coming to campus and spending your time with us. And I know you're leaving as soon as you got here for another talk. So thank you for coming just for a short time as well. I want to, any last thoughts that you want to share with the room here today?
Yeah, just first of all, thank you guys for all being here and being together in this journey. I think what we can do in California, and the reason I am excited to wake up and work every day, is because we really can make this energy transition happen. It's the most important project, in my view, that there is. And that's going to be led by our state and by cities and by all the visionaries in the room here today. I think I would say, just in closing, that as we go forward in this journey, to recognize there's a lot of ambient stress out there, okay? And it really is a time for kindness to each other, to your colleagues, to your friends, even people that you may know quite well, may not always share how stressed they are. One of my fellow colleagues, a fellow commissioner, is the daughter of an undocumented immigrant. And so when they're talking about ending birthright citizenship, that's her. She's a commissioner, right? And so there is a lot of stress out there. And I think the way we get through these times is by pulling together, supporting each other, checking in with each other. And if we do that, we'll be okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.